I'm Aaron Baker from PhoneDog.com, and it's part 2 of the dogfight battle between the Moto X and the Apple iPhone 5. They're both designed by their respective companies. This is pretty through and through Google, and this is obviously through and through Apple. Which one is the ultimate device to get? Let's find out in part 2. Part 2 of a dogfight battle between the Moto X and the Apple iPhone 5, and in part 2 we're focusing on software. Before I get too far into this though, special thanks to my partners at Best Buy Mobile, because they give us phones like the Moto X and the Apple iPhone 5 that we literally just turn around and give to you for free on PhoneDog.com. It's called our Instant Win game, or our One-Pawed Bandit game, so be sure to check it out at PhoneDog.com. When you walk into Best Buy Mobile to get either of these devices, they're carrier agnostic. They don't get paid on commission. They'll help you find the carrier that works best for you, be it Verizon, be it AT&T or Sprint, or even T-Mobile. They'll hook you up at Best Buy Mobile. So in part 2, and I talked about this in part 1, I'm splitting up the dogfight style a little bit just to see what you guys think of this. Let me know on Twitter at PhoneDog_Aaron. What I did is I'm separating between hardware in part 1 and software in part 2, and kind of honing in a little bit more on both in their respective parts of the dogfight video. So let me know what you think on Twitter. In part 2, like I just said, we're talking about software, and just to give you a recap from part 1, these devices are similar in more ways than you may expect, because with Motorola being owned by Google, this device is one of the first devices that really has Google's hand in it in terms of design, in terms of the user interface, and the overall look and feel. And obviously with the Apple iPhone 5, it's designed in-house by Apple. The software is Apple software, so unlike perhaps an HTC device, which has Google software and HTC's build quality, this is very much Google on Google, Apple on Apple. So from a comparison perspective, this might be one of the best dogfights we've done this year, and this will also probably be the last dogfight we'll do with the iPhone 5, or one of the last ones, as we expect new iPhones to come at some point this month. But let's talk about software. Android 4.2.2 running over here. There are some minor customizations, which I'll show you, but they're very minimalist in look and feel, and they really bring some great value to the table in comparison to 100% stock Android. Then you have Apple's iOS 7 here. Keep in mind this is a beta version of iOS 7. There may be some minor hiccups. Really excited about this because it does represent a new design for Apple. You may love it, you may hate it, but one thing's for sure, it does look different versus iOS 6, and we'll talk about that in a quick walkthrough of iOS 7. This is beta 6 that's running on this device right now. So taking a look at Android 4.2.2 on this device, you're going to notice some Motorola customizations, and obviously you do get some AT&T stuff out of the box here. It's not a completely clean of bloatware version, if you will. My AT&T is here, visual voicemail is here as well. And then scrolling back, you do get some Motorola stuff like Moto Care, Migrate, all great applications. And one of my favorites, Motorola's Assist application. Now, if you've watched my 30-day challenge, you already know kind of the functionality of these applications. But bear with me here for the new people that are watching, because we're going to go through these. And I'm going to talk about some of my favorite stuff on the Moto X. The Assist is great. I absolutely love it. Driving, meeting, and sleeping, 3 things I do on a regular basis. It's part of both my job, and then obviously it's part of my life. Sleeping is a great thing. But driving here, you can come in here and select driving mode, and it works with the accelerometer to detect when you're driving, and it'll kick on driving mode when you're on the road. And you have a couple of options here. You can keep music play on. So for example, let's say I get a text message. I can come in here and say, talk to me. I can read the text message and have it tell me who's calling. It can even send a quick reply like, I'm driving and we'll get back to you soon. I can obviously turn these on or off if I want them. Meeting is a great one as well, because it syncs up with my calendar and says, hey, you got that meeting at 12 o'clock. You need to keep your phone on silent. And so I can go in here, for example, and say silence all. But this is kind of cool too. I click it here when a favorite calls, I can check it. When someone calls twice, I can check it as well. So for example, family, fiance, whatever, a favorite in my phone book, and then when someone calls twice. So if boss is trying to get a hold of me, for example, and let's say I'm doing a video or I'm in a meeting, if he calls twice, it'll ring straight through over the silence, which is nice. And then of course, sleeping as well, very similar to Do Not Disturb over here. Choose my times, 11 to 6, and then I can silence it, and again I have the same options for when a favorite calls or when someone calls twice. Now over here on iOS 7, you've got a couple of options with that type of stuff as well, and they've improved on those in iOS 7. I've got Do Not Disturb, for example. I can come in here and say, hey, let's schedule it from 10 to 7. I wish I slept that long. 10 to 7, allow calls from favorites. So again, very similar over here. If I have favorites in my phone book, I can allow those calls and then repeated calls as well, except over here it's a second call from the same person within 3 minutes versus 5 minutes. And of course silence, and only when the iPhone's locked. So you've got some settings and customizations you can do here to really make that feature your own. And then of course you have privacy as well. You can turn that on and off. And then going down through here, you can see pretty similar user interface, or pretty similar, I would say interface, but look and feel is very different on iOS 7. It's a little bit more of a flatter design, as we've talked about extensively in videos on PhoneDog.com. You can see the icons have changed as well. So you got that option over here, but then iOS 7 brings some new things as well. For example, you can swipe up from the bottom here to access quick toggles. So I've got my airplane mode I can throw on, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, do not disturb, and then screen orientation lock. I can change my brightness here. I can turn on my music, and then I've got a couple of options here where I can turn on my flashlight, and you can see flash turns on. I've got this one as well. I can come in to my timer and just swipe up to access that, calculator, and then camera, and then of course AirDrop as well, which is AirDrop very similar to, for example, S-Beam on the Galaxy S4s, or perhaps a TiV Beam on the TiV devices, Tap and Send on Windows Phone 8, very similar here. I can send stuff to other people via AirDrop. And then of course this has iMessage as well, so for people that have Apple products, still a great value add here, so you can use iMessage and get rid of those pesky carrier text messaging charges if you so desire, and you can use that on Wi-Fi as well. So if you're on a plane, for example, you can't text message because your data has to be shut, or your connectivity has to be shut off, but you can use Wi-Fi and send stuff via iMessage. So again, kind of a substitute to Google Voice, if you will, whereas Google Voice over here, you can kick it on and use it over Wi-Fi. That's something particularly useful to me because I travel on a regular basis, so if somebody has iMessage or Google Voice, you can use my respective Google Voice account, or in this case, iMessage, to access messages while I'm on the road or while I'm up in the air. So we'll go in here as well and take a look at a couple of my other favorites. Touchless control is a great one. Okay, Google now. And I'm sorry, I did not train the launch phase on this one just yet. I reset this a couple of days ago. It's part of the 30-day challenge, was testing a couple of things, but active notifications is great. And then I can go in here and select that. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and run through it really quickly so you can see. We'll record it. Okay, Google now. And it knew the phone was on the table. How cool is that? Okay, Google now. Okay, Google now. Okay, Google now. And then I can hit done. And so now that it's programmed, I can be anywhere. The phone can be turned off, and I can say, okay, Google now. Tell me the weather in Dallas. And tell me literally weather in Dallas. Okay, Google now. Tell me the weather in Dallas.
77 degrees with light rain in Dallas.
So again, a very similar comparison to Siri on the Apple iPhone 5. Now, I personally don't use the voice stuff very often. I prefer to do it myself, but it is really nice when you're driving and you can say something like, okay, Google now. Okay, Google now. Text message 555-1234, message hello. And let's see if it works. And then I can just send the message, which is really, really cool. I still wouldn't send it because I don't look down at my device when I drive, but still much easier to do when you're in a meeting or when you're doing something, get your hands full at the grocery store versus reaching down and trying to text on the device itself. You've got Siri over here as well, and Siri's design is completely different over here. Hi, Siri.
Yes.
How are you today?
I feel good.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, Google. Let me try that again.
Searching Google for a try.
Okay, Google Glass. That is a really hard phrase to say.
Searching Google for glasses of Facebook.
And clearly I was doing that incorrectly or saying stuff afterwards. But iOS 7, huge overhaul here in the notifications area as well. I've got Today, All, and Missed, and I can see all these different applications that are connecting via the notification area. And then of course the lock screen looks totally different here as well. We'll click on it so you can see. And then the Moto X has something called active notifications, which we'll take a look at here in just a second, but completely different. I can access notifications from here. I can access my shortcuts from the bottom up. I've got my camera application here, which I can go to really quickly, and then slide to unlock like normal, but my notifications will show up right here, and I can swipe individually to access those, or I can swipe to the side and go straight in to my home screen rather. Passbook's still here. All the Apple stuff you know is still here. But one of my personal favorites, the gyroscopic thing that it does here, which you'll see. And it's kind of hard to tell on this background. Let me see if I can get a better background for you. Wallpapers and brightness. Let's see. Let's go to the other. Actually, let's go to. Let's find a dynamic wallpaper. Let's do this one. And then I'll come back out here It's kind of hard to tell, but when I move it around, it moves the picture behind it and kind of the applications out of the way. So it really gives this kind of cool feel of, for example, if the application is blocking somebody's face, you move it to the side, you may be able to see part of their face. Now, active notifications, really cool over here. Keeps the battery consumption to a minimum. I can click the lock and either unlock directly, or if I have a message, I can swipe down to access that. So for example, if somebody sent me a Twitter message or an email, I could see it just by pressing right there. And of course, it detects the movement when I move the device and lets me do that. And it only activates the pixels on the display needed to tell me, for example, the time and then the lock or unlock area. So it still has a standard notification or a standard unlock screen, but that is a really nice feature on top of standard Android 4.2.2 lock screen. So going back in here, of course, typical Android 4.2.2 look and feel with device personal. One of my other favorite features on the Moto X, and I want to talk about before we wrap this up, Motorola's notifications, also known as Motorola Connect. It's a widget you can install, or I should say an extension you can install through your Chrome browser. So for example, I have it over here on my work computer, and I can send text messages and see missed calls from the device itself. Really a great feature. So for example, I'm notorious for keeping my phone on silent when I'm at work and turning it face down like that. So really nice, because when I get a text message, it'll obviously pop up on the device like normal, but it will also pop up through Motorola's Connect in the Chrome extension and say, hey, come home or get milk. For example, my fiance, get milk and then come home as quickly as you can. It'll show up on here, and it'll also show up on this. And then of course I can reply from my computer, and I can also see missed calls. If you were to call the device right now, it would ring on here, and then it would pop up with a notification as well on the screen on my computer telling me that someone has called. Other improvements to iOS 7 over here, we'll go into the radio so you can see iTunes Radio, very similar to, for example, Spotify, Pandora streaming options, things like that, but it's obviously running through iTunes as well. So continuing along that great ecosystem that Apple's done with iOS, it continues on into iOS 7. So obviously, as we wrap this up, wish there was more time to talk about software. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So as we wrap this up, like anything else in this world, it's going to depend on what's most important to you, be it, for example, a 4.7-inch display versus a 4-inch display, or maybe you like the overall look and feel of the Motorola X versus the Apple iPhone 5, or maybe you like the Apple ecosystem over Android's ecosystem, for example, or maybe you like the camera on the Apple iPhone 5, which continues to be one of the best cameras I've ever worked with. You've got photo, square, and pano here. You can do a couple of different options with it, HDR on or off, and you can change the color just by going over here to the little shortcut button and taking pictures. Really a beautiful camera image here. This is something this device does not do as well. The camera's a little bit lacking, but still a 10 megapixel camera. It takes pretty decent images all around. I'll bring over Moto Skip here. Actually, you know what? We'll focus in on the Apple logo, or the iPhone logo. No physical camera button, but once I click the screen, it automatically takes the picture, focuses in and takes the picture. Let it focus. Snaps a picture, and then once I'm there, I can swipe over from my active camera to my gallery, and I can change it around here. I can do some cool color editing stuff. So for example, I can make it look vintage. I can come over here and crop it. I can add in filters, very similar to Instagram, and then I can save this picture just like that. So you do get some nice editing options over here out of the box. Whereas over here, while you do get the ability to customize the look and feel of the picture, that's about it. The editing options are still very limited over here on the iPhone 5, but still overall imaging quality, fantastic on the iPhone 5. So maybe you're a camera buff. Maybe you like the camera on the iPhone 5 a little bit more. Maybe you like the ecosystem of Android. Whatever the case may be, decide what's best for you. But overall in the dogfight, the winner is the Moto X. Android 4.2, incredible improvements from previous versions of Android. This phone feels great in the hand. This is a phone, I had to call it a phone man's phone, if you will. If you like to talk on the phone, you're one of the few people that still does it on a regular basis, going to be one of the best phones to hold in your hand for long calls, be it conference calls or calls with family or friends. Great feel in the hand, very ergonomic. Travel's still great on the device. Battery life relatively decent on this phone, and it continues to be a great device all around with improvements like Motorola's Connect, Motorola Assist, and more. iPhone 5 still a great device, still very popular, about to be replaced by what we believe to be the 5S and the 5C, so we'll find out. But in terms of comparison purposes, Moto X is the winner in this dogfight. Keep it locked on PhoneDog.com for more. I'm on Twitter at PhoneDog_Aaron, Facebook, Facebook.com/HiAaronBaker. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.